Hello and welcome back to my Formula 1 2020 Fantasy Prediction season. My name is Alex Does F1 Stuff, and today we are covering round number 8 in France. And it has been a little while since I've actually recorded anything. I just took a few days off because I felt like I was slightly drowning myself a little bit, but I'm back, like I said, with the Fantasy Prediction season around France. So for those who haven't seen this whole series, I am aiming to essentially predict what would have happened in 2020 had the old Rona not gone round, with a bunch of maths based off of the 2019 season. So this series of videos mirrors the 2019 season, so that's why it's France this weekend rather than Baku, as I'm using the data from last year's calendar. So for those that are interested in starting this series from round number 1 in Australia, I'll pop a little playlist in the corner. Equally, there is a maths video of exactly how I've gone about creating all of these tables and how I go about working out all of the new values and working out the new race orders, etc. There is a separate video for that. And also, before we begin, there is a making of a behind the scenes, essentially, video with a bunch of time lapses from going from a blank Excel workbook spreadsheet thing to the finished video that you are now watching. Again, I'll link that somewhere. But without further ado, we will head straight on in to practice around, what track is it? Paul Ricard in France. It is Valtteri Bottas who once again leads the way in the practice sessions from Verstappen in P2, gaining 2 places from last year. Hamilton is third in front of Leclerc, who is just over a second away from Bottas. Ricciardo is still showing good single lap pace in his year in 5th, along with Perez in 6th. Then comes Gasly, Sainz, Vettel and Norris, who make it into the top 10. Ocon and Stroll are next, just 1/100th apart, with the two Alpha cars in front of, or the two Alpha Tauri cars in front of Magnussen, who also has the two Alfa Romeo cars behind him. The Williams pair and Grosjean round off the field. Valtteri Bottas once again leads the session from Verstappen, Hamilton and Leclerc. Vettel is now P5, followed closely by the two McLaren cars. Ricciardo and Perez slip to 8th and 9th, in front of Gasly in 10th, 1.5 seconds off of Verstappen's pace. Magnussen is again between two Alpha cars, with Raikkonen in front and Giovinazzi behind. Ocon, Kvyat, Grosjean, Albon, Stroll and the two Williams again round off the field. Practice 3 just before qualifying is once again led by Valtteri Bottas, and by the biggest margin so far this weekend, with teammate Hamilton in 2nd, with Verstappen 3rd and Leclerc 4th. Vettel is 5th with Ricciardo 6th, then comes Gasly, Perez, Sainz in the McLaren and Raikkonen in the Alfa Romeo in the top 10. Ocon and Norris just miss out in front of Giovinazzi, Albon, Grosjean and Stroll. Finally, Magnussen is not between any Alfa Romeo cars, but he does have one behind him in 18th, with the two Williams cars again on the back row, but this time Latifi is in front of Russell, who had an issue. So leaving a Bottas-dominated practice session and heading into qualifying, can anybody stop his pole position march? He has taken all 7 pole positions so far this year. Can he make it 8 in a row at France? So once again, rude. Once more, Valtteri Bottas is sitting at the top of the timing sheets as Perez is 2nd in Q1. Verstappen, Ricciardo, Leclerc, Hamilton, Ocon, Raikkonen, Sainz, Giovinazzi and Gasly are all safely through into Q2, as is Magnussen in 12th. Norris, Stroll and Vettel are all within 2/10 of being knocked out, but are all through to Q2, as both Alfa Tauri cars and both Williams are out in Q1, along with Grosjean in P17. Bottas again tops the timing sheets in Q2, as it's looking likely he's going to take his 8th pole in a row. Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Perez and Vettel are all safely through into the shootout, along with Sainz and Giovinazzi. Norris only just squeezes into the knockout session by just 0.04 of a second from Gasly, with Ocon, Raikkonen, Stroll and Magnussen all out. So starting the Q3 session, it is looking very, very likely that Valtteri Bottas will claim his 8th pole position in a row. Let's have a look at what goes down in Q3. It is Max Verstappen who breaks Bottas' pole streak, nabbing the top spot by just 9 thousandths of a second. Hamilton is once again P3, Leclerc 4th, and Ricciardo a solid 5th. The two McLarens are 6th and 7th ahead of Perez in the Racing Point, and Vettel in the Ferrari, who sits P9. Giovinazzi rounds off the shootout in 10th place. So taking a look at the starting grid, it is the first time this year that a Mercedes is not at the front. It is Max Verstappen who will lead us away in France. The biggest gainer from last year though is Sergio Perez, who gained 6 places, but the biggest loser is Alex Albon, who loses 8. As we head into the race around Paul Ricard, last year it was a little bit of a bore fest until the last lap or so when we had that incident with Ricciardo getting those 2 penalties. Let's see what happens this time round. It is once again a Mercedes 1-2, their second in a row, with Leclerc making it onto the podium for Ferrari. Stroll had another brilliant race, coming from P14 to 4th ahead of championship leader Verstappen. Vettel is 6th, with Norris ending in P7, his first points since Australia. Gasly is 8th, with Ocon and Raikkonen rounding off the top 10 and the points paying positions. Giovinazzi just missed out on points in 11th, with Kvyat and Magnussen and Perez all behind. But the closest battle of the year so far by a long way at the flag was for P15, with Grosjean beating Albon by just 8 thousandths of a second at the line, with the 2 Williams again the last of the race finishers, with the randomly chosen non-finishers being Ricciardo in the Renault and Sainz in the McLaren. It seems that Ricciardo just cannot get any racing luck whatsoever. He clearly has the single lap pace, the pace to put the car in the top 10 in qualifying, but when it comes to a race and a full race distance, he cannot get the Renault hooked up. Along with a dominant 1-2 victory by over a minute, Mercedes do come away with the fastest lap, and that award goes to Lewis Hamilton. So as we take a look to see what effect France has now had on the championships, we'll head to the drivers' gains, and again it's fairly even across the board, with people scoring points all throughout. There are just the 2 shuffles though this time round, as Vettel gets past Gasly for 5th place, and Norris leapfrogs both Kvyat and Raikkonen for 15th, as Verstappen's lead has now come down to just 6 points from Bottas, who has Hamilton only 1 point behind him. Leclerc is 25 points behind this battle on 96, and 35 points clear of Vettel, a lonely 4th place for him. Stroll is also in a lonely best of the rest position on 43, as Grosjean heads a pack 12 strong, covered by 24 points. As for the constructors, it's once again Mercedes who take all the points available to them, to Ferrari's 23, Red Bull's 14, Racing Point's 12, McLaren's 6, Renault's 2, and Alfa Romeo's solitary 1. And for the first time this year, there are no shuffles on the board whatsoever, as Mercedes' lead stretches to 56 points at the top, as Ferrari close to within 30 of Red Bull. Racing Point have fallen even further behind this group, but they still pull away from the midfield, who are as close as ever. And that is the end of the French Grand Prix for my fantasy prediction season. I hope you have all enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next video with whatever I decide to make. I'll see you guys then.